Hello everyone, and welcome to Scary Berry. In today's story, a girl is kidnapped for almost 18 years before being found again, but she has completely changed. So, without further ado, let us get started with a crazy kidnapping case you wouldn't believe is actually true. The case of Jaycee Dugard. Jaycee Dugard was born in 1980 and grew up only with a single mother, as her dad was not involved in her life. Despite the pain she felt growing up without a dad, she was still a gleeful girl who got along well with her mother. When Jaycee was around the age of 7, her mother married another man, and they had another child, which Jaycee never got particularly close to. Nevertheless, the family was great together, and they lived a happy life in the years following. That is until 1991, when Jaycee, then 11 years old, was pronounced missing by the local authorities of Myers, California, just south of Lake Tahoe. Previously, Jaycee's family had decided to move to Myers from Arcadia, California, mostly because they thought it was a safer community, in addition to it being surrounded by nature and science. However, they would be proven very wrong when Jaycee did not get home on time after school. It turns out that on the morning of June 10, 1991, as Jaycee walked down the street just outside of her house to catch the school bus, she was approached by a strange car. The car slowed, the window lowered, and a subtle clicking noise, followed by a bright light, made Jaycee collapse, unconscious. Afterwards, a passenger dragged Jaycee into the car, and the vehicle sped away. As the car drove off, Jaycee's stepfather, who had been looking out at the events occurring through the window, attempted to catch up to the speeding car on a bicycle, but failed. Initially, Jaycee's biological father and stepfather were major suspects of this crime, but they were hastily questioned, and their names were cleared shortly thereafter. And after months of searching and investigating to no avail, the cops reluctantly were forced to call the search off and hope for a lead to come knocking sometime soon, or for Jaycee to naturally come back around. 18 years later, Jaycee Dugard was found, and a middle-aged man by the name of Philip Garrido was arrested and brought in for questioning. What that man confessed to that day has been described by investigators as monstrous, gruesome, and haunting. It turns out that Garrido had kidnapped Jaycee that day with assistance from his wife Nancy, and they had brought her back to their property and locked her in a soundproof shed, somehow unseen and unnoticed by authorities. Behind his house, Garrido had many tents and sheds just like the one Jaycee was led into while blindfolded, handcuffed, and completely nude. After throwing her into the shed, she was locked in, and Garrido told her if she tried to escape, his Doberman dogs would attack her. Shortly after this, Garrido forced Jaycee to shower with her, and then left her alone for a week, forcing her to go to the bathroom in a bucket, and feeding her the bare minimum. A week after the abduction, Garrido raped her. After this first instance, Garrido began to do it regularly for the following 3 years that she was held captive. Throughout her time there, Jaycee recalled just how insane this man was, as he would mention voices speaking to him from the walls, and he would mention that he was chosen by God to do what he does. Over time, Garrido moved Jaycee into bigger rooms, all while continuing to sexually assault her and keep her locked in. Eventually, Nancy, Garrido's wife, took over looking after Jaycee, since Garrido went to jail for drug possession, and she treated Jaycee even worse. Sometime after her abduction, Jaycee had actually been spotted by a neighbor of the Garridos through their fence, but they had not suspected anything bad was happening, and Philip Garrido caught her and took her back, before building 8-foot-tall fences that would prevent Jaycee from ever seeing anyone else again. Throughout these years, Jaycee was not allowed to see dentists or doctors, and she was not allowed to say her own name. However, things would only get more twisted over time. Jaycee became pregnant with a child at 13, and then again at 17 years old. The Gyarados forced Jaycee's children to call them mother and father, and became angry whenever Jaycee referred to herself as the mother. Jaycee played the role of older sister. Eventually, the Gyarados were caught after Philip Garrido was spotted with young children by UC Berkeley police that knew him, and knew that he did not have any children, and had previous sexual assault charges. During their questioning, Jaycee actually stuck to her false identity as the child of the Gyarados, but eventually broke and revealed her true identity. Investigators came to the conclusion that Jaycee had Stockholm Syndrome, which means she had been brainwashed and manipulated to the point that she truly believed that Garrido could take care of her. Both Nancy and Philip Garrido filed guilty pleas, and Philip was charged on 13 sexual assault charges and given 31 years to life in prison because of his history of being a sex offender. His wife is still in prison, to be released in a few decades. Jaycee received $20 million from the government and now lives peacefully with her 2 children, and has published a novel about her terrible experiences called A Stolen Life. It is terrifying and absolutely sickening to think that people like the Gyarados even exist, and it is hard to imagine the sheer amount of narcissism and mental illness it would take for someone to do what they did. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you took something from this video. If you want to watch another video, feel free to, and if you want to support the channel, like and subscribe. I appreciate all of you, my friends. Have a good day, and stay very scary.